Okay, we are done with routing as well. Let's go to the login and logout. So we want to log in and using AngularFireAuth. We need to create a service called auth.service so we do all authentications in that service. All right, let's go ahead and see what we have on our website so far. See, when I click on login, it takes us to the login component, login page, but we have nothing here. So let's go ahead and design this part. Now I'm going to open login.html. Let's clear this one. Now let's say we want to have 3 buttons to log in with Google, log in with Facebook, and log in with a regular email. So I'm going to have 3 buttons here, and I want to say login with, and let's say Google, Facebook, email. All right. For these buttons, let's see, they probably don't look good now. Let's see how they look like. Pretty ugly. So let's go ahead and give them some nice Angular material attributes. I'm going to give all of them matte button and color primary. Okay, very nice. So they look much better now. Let's bind these buttons to a function to log in Google. Let's actually write for both of them at the same time. Click and log in. Now to Facebook, and this one is email. Nice. Okay. Now we need to declare those in our TS file as well. So first one is login Google. Now I'm going to duplicate this with Control D. Okay, this one is Facebook, and this one is email. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and generate our service inside our services folder. Okay, so ngg service, generate service inside services folder, and let's call it auth. Okay, it's generated now. It's not here. Let's refresh the Explorer. Okay, we have these 2 files here. We also need to provide that service to our application in app.module.ts. So let's provide it here, auth service. Okay, now we can write our login authentication in our auth service. Basically, we want to provide a service to this login Google. So whenever the user clicks on this login Google here, that service is fired and the authentication takes place. So here I'm going to have a private field. Let's call it AngularFireAuth, and of type AngularFireAuth. This AngularFireAuth is working with promises. So basically, for promise, we know we should use the async keyword. And then I have login. I create my function here, and I can say this function returns of type promise of void. Okay, this is not required, but I like to have it in my code so it's clear. Now I am using the keyword await to use that for that promise. That's required. Okay, and then AngularFireAuth. Then I can have different options here. So sign in with pop-up or redirect. I'm using pop-up. Okay, and then I have to have a provider here. What do I mean by provider? Basically, if we go back to our Firebase control panel, you see here the provider is here is Google, right? Because I logged in with my Google account. Now, in the sign-in method, these are the type of providers that we have, right? Facebook, Twitter. We can log in with any of these. So let's go ahead and give our application a provider. In order to have a provider, we need to import also something from Firebase. So I import everything as a Firebase from Firebase. Okay, not like that. Very good. Now I can have new Firebase dot default dot auth dot, and now I have different options here. See, we have different providers, Facebook, and in this case I want to use Google auth provider. There we go. We are ready, and now we can provide this function, this logging function, into this item. So I say, okay, now first I need to inject that service here. So private, and I call it auth service of type auth service. It's imported up here now. Now I can go ahead and use that. So I say auth service dot login, and then it's all ready to be used. Here I'm getting these errors because it says it's my length basically is saying I should say what is the return type of this function. So let's go ahead and run the program and see if we get logged in. Okay, so login, and here login with Google. There we go. Okay, if I log in here, there we go. I'm logged in now. And if we go here to users, you see that I'm logged in. Let me log in with another account. Okay, with the other one. Okay, now let me go back and forth to refresh it. See, I have two login information now. I have two more buttons here to cover, and I have to have these two functions because they are bind here into my HTML DOM. Now, if I want to use this line here again for my Facebook, I'll have to go back into my service and create another method here to have a new provider basically. But now I want to do it another way. Instead of passing my provider right here, I want to remove it from here, and I want to pass it right into my TS code. So I mean my component. And this way I can just change these to Facebook provider, and this one can be the email auth provider. Now what I'm missing is that this Firebase that we imported here, we need to import it up there here. Okay, we are getting an error because we have an argument here, but we don't have the parameter in our login here. So here I'm going to say this is a provider of type any, and now we are good. We can now provide this provider here. We don't have any errors here, and our errors over here are gone. And now let's add this void to all of these because then we don't have that length warning either. Our buttons, three of them, have their own providers, and also in our auth login, we only have one login method. I would like to also modify something here. This login, let's make it a one word. Okay. Now let's take care of our sign out button that we have on our NAVBAR.html. So here I have a logout, and I can bind this to this, let's say logout, and I'll go ahead and open my navbar TS, and here logout. Okay, let's say this is of type void, the return type. So let's inject our auth service, private auth service of type auth service. Okay, that's imported up there. And let's come here and say, okay, in my auth service, I don't have a logout method. So let's go ahead and create a logout method here. And this one of type void as well. Now, here I can call my AngularFireAuth and say sign out. Okay, that's it. That's all we need. Now we can go back into our navbar and call that in our auth service. We can call that logout method, and that's all. Now, when we are back to our after we are logged in, let's say we are logged in here. Now we can go ahead here and click on logout, and it logs out. That's all. So to summarize what I did for this login and logout buttons, I made my login buttons inside the login component. Okay, inside my login component.html, I made it there, and I bind them to these methods. And then in my login component.ts, I must have these methods, and for them I am using auth service to perform my login. But because I have three different buttons for the provider, I'm providing the provider inside these methods as my arguments. Then I go into my auth service. Here I have my login method. I use that argument that I sent in as a parameter into this method. Of course, it's a type of promise, so we use the keywords async and await. And then here I choose to sign in with pop-up, and my provider is coming from my login TS. These are my providers. And this is all good for my login. And let's go for the logout. Basically, because my logout is directly being operated from my navbar, inside my navbar. So I just go into my navbar and my navbar.html, and I just bind it to a method called logout. Okay, then I have to have a method in my component TS logout. Then I am calling this logout method from my auth service. Okay, let's go into the auth service. I have that logout, and then here I'm using AngularFireAuth, which was here, which has an integrated sign out function. Okay, let's go ahead and see what we have done so far. We have taken care of the login, the logout, and we should navigate the user to home after logout. Alright, so let's go ahead and do it in our navbar.ts. I am not going to do that in our navbar HTML. The reason is because we are not sure if the user hits this button and then we navigate them to home, we are not sure if this logout was performed properly. So after this logout method that comes from auth service, we are sure here that the logout process was executed successfully. So I'm going to inject router here. Let's say private router of type router. Now we can go here and say router dot navigate. Okay, let's have home. / empty / is just home. Beautiful. Now let's test it. If I'm logged in, now I want to log out. There we go. Okay, done with this part as well.